你好大的胆子！
这人抓不得！
不好了，师兄弟闯大祸啦！
杀我天圣教必反！
将那狐狸和狮子拿下，带回大理寺。
皇帝也在圣教暗插了眼线。
暗律，满门抄斩。
Qin Mu's ideological clash with the Kang national preceptor revealed their sharp insights. Qin Mu directly addressed the fundamental principles of the Tiansheng sect, causing the fox spirit to frighten and stir up trouble at Longhu Lake. The felling of trees and grilling of fish alarmed the emperor. Continuing from the previous episode, the Kang national preceptor smiled, reminding Qin Mu not to be overconfident. While wisdom is valuable, arrogance easily leads to misjudgment. However, he admitted that Qin Mu's words had indeed touched him, and thus inquired about the reason why the Tiansheng sect did not rebel. Qin Mu responded that because their ideologies were aligned, there was no need for rebellion. The national preceptor mentioned his establishment of schools after taking office, and Qin Mu frankly admitted that he was emulating the national preceptor's reforms. The national preceptor pointed out meaningfully that this move might turn the Tiansheng sect into a state within a state in Kang, and questioned whether the Tiansheng sect would inevitably seize the opportunity to rise up if the world were in turmoil. Qin Mu calmly explained that the Tiansheng sect's lack of uprising was not due to any intention to seize power, but rather because the current Kang kingdom was essentially an enlarged version of the Tiansheng sect. Since they were one entity, there was no reason for them to oppose each other. The Imperial Preceptor pressed Qin Mu on the timing of his rebellion. Qin Mu solemnly replied that the Heavenly Saint Sect would only rise up when the Imperial Preceptor betrayed their shared ideals and the Kang kingdom ceased to be a holy place. The Imperial Preceptor praised his courage, but Qin Mu humbly claimed he was merely telling the truth, knowing he could not deceive the Imperial Preceptor. The Imperial Preceptor walked to the well and frankly admitted that he had originally intended to support this new leader from the great ruins, whose foundation was still shallow, but he had now changed his mind. He believed that those with firm ideals were the most dangerous and difficult to persuade in comparison. Wiping out the entire sect was much simpler. Fortunately, the Heavenly Saint Sect's ideals did not conflict with those of the Kang kingdom. Qin Mu then inquired about the Imperial Preceptor's attitude towards the Daoist sect and the Great Thunderclap Temple. The Imperial Preceptor solemnly stated that it would depend on whether he could practice the ideal of unity of knowledge and action. If he could carry it out to the end, he would eliminate him with all his might. If not, he could still allow them to exist. When Qin Mu inquired about the Grand Preceptor's personal philosophy, the Grand Preceptor avoided answering, only stating that philosophy should be reflected in action, for this is the unity of knowledge and practice. He concluded with a profound admonition to the young Holy Master: the road ahead is long. Qin Mu never truly understood the Grand Preceptor of Kang. At his current level, he was far from being able to engage in a philosophical debate with him. The Grand Preceptor's vision and insight were far too profound, his cunning unfathomable, and his understanding of Daoist magic and supernatural powers far beyond his reach. He couldn't fathom the thoughts of this powerful figure, nor could he judge whether their future relationship would be one of enmity or friendship. But as the Holy Master, he had to plan for the future of the Heavenly Saint Sect. Qin Mu cautiously expressed that the Heavenly Saint Sect was willing to support the Grand Preceptor during the internal strife in Kang, but hoped to receive a promise that the Grand Preceptor would not abandon him after the rebellion was quelled. The Grand Preceptor of Kang turned around and frankly stated that he needed the Heavenly Saint Sect as a sword hanging over his head, a constant reminder and warning to avoid making mistakes. He smiled slightly, saying that his strength was too great, and if he went astray, no one could stop him. Therefore, he needed a force that could punish him if his Dao heart strayed. If he ever betrayed their shared ideals, he expected Qin Mu to come and take his life. These words sent a chill down Qin Mu's spine. After the Grand Preceptor left, he let out a long sigh, feeling a chill run down his spine. At that moment, only one thought remained in his mind: the Grand Preceptor of Kang was no ordinary person. Without emotions or desires, without selfish thoughts, such a person might have transcended the mortal realm and could be called a saint. Just as he was calming himself and dispelling his distracting thoughts, the dragon-like Chelin in the courtyard said in a deep voice that although the person had been standing right in front of him, he hadn't been able to sense his presence. Qin Mu then realized that he hadn't used his azure sky heavenly eye to observe the Grand Preceptor and couldn't help but regret missing a golden opportunity. At this moment, the scholars were outside. Qin Feiyue, who had been waiting for a long time, saw the Grand Preceptor emerge and hurriedly bowed to greet him. On the way back, the Grand Preceptor suddenly praised a certain Grand Master for his discerning eye. When Qin Feiyue mistakenly pointed at someone else, the Grand Preceptor looked back at the Imperial Academy and said that the successor chosen by the Grand Chancellor was exceptionally talented, but too similar to himself, making him want to eliminate him every time they met. He muttered to himself that he hated looking in the mirror because the image in the mirror was never as perfect as the one in his ideals. Meanwhile, in the scholar's residence, Qin Mu finally calmed down. He knew that his self-created unified technique still needed improvement and that he had to concentrate on studying it, striving for perfection. The Grand Preceptor of Yanqing had a profound impact on him. A person who strives and fights for their ideals always possesses a captivating charm. As for the Grand Preceptor of Yanqing saying that leaving the Heavenly Demon Sect would be like leaving a sword hanging over one's head, achieving that would be extremely difficult. Even integrating the entire power of the Heavenly Demon Sect wouldn't be enough. The Imperial Preceptor's ambition is so grand we must grant his wish. Qin Mu activated his cultivation technique, slowly walking through the courtyard, carefully comprehending the unified cultivation method he had created based on the 3 pillars of the Overlord body technique. He then summarized and organized it, occasionally taking out the great nurturing Heavenly Demon scripture to study it further. After a long while, Qin Mu exhaled a breath of turbid air, his speed suddenly increasing. He raced across the mountains and plains, unleashing the unified cultivation method he had comprehended. His figure flashed like a shadow across the front and back of the Imperial Academy. Although Qin Mu was running at breakneck speed, his mind was still constantly thinking, more active than ever before. This meeting with the Imperial Preceptor of Kang, though not involving much discussion, had left his mind in a state of heightened excitement. Facing someone of unparalleled talent stimulates, pressures, and elevates oneself. Although it was just an ordinary conversation for the National Preceptor of Kang, it held profound significance for Qin Mu. Simply standing before this legendary figure required immense courage, and engaging in dialogue with him demanded the full activation of his wisdom. Communicating with wise people enriches one's own wisdom. Associating with the mediocre makes one mediocre. Qin Mu seized this opportunity of conversation with the National Preceptor to reach his peak of wisdom and perfect his great unification technique. Suddenly, his pace slowed, and his vital energy circulated through his modified Overlord Body 3 Dan technique. This current Overlord Body 3 Dan technique was his perfected Great Unification technique, incorporating the strengths of numerous techniques from the Great Nurturing Heavenly Demon scripture. The original Overlord Body 3 Dan technique had no attributes when used solely to activate other techniques. Its power was inferior to techniques paired with supernatural abilities. For example, the Thunder Sound 8 forms required the Tathagata Mahayana Sutra to unleash its full power. The rain-making technique requires the Black Tortoise water control skill to activate it. The Thunderous Flame technique requires the Vermilion Bird fire control skill to fully unleash the power of thunder and fire. However, the Overlord Body 3 core technique is a technique, lacking accompanying spells and supernatural abilities. This time, Qin Mu comprehended the unified technique, using the Overlord Body 3 core technique as its foundation and studying the scriptures transmitted on the woodcutter's stone, activating the various characteristics of the Overlord Body 3 core technique, allowing it to unleash the power of various techniques. The Overlord Body 3 core technique has no attributes, cannot be used for body tempering, lacks accompanying supernatural abilities, and cannot be directly transformed into powerful attack force. But with this comprehension of the unified technique, Qin Mu finally solved this problem. Now, the Overlord Body 3 core technique is more inclusive and versatile. Using his modified Overlord Body 3 core technique to activate other spells, swordsmanship, and combat skills, its power is in no way inferior to its accompanying techniques. This is the so-called Great Unification technique of the Great Nurturing Heavenly Demon scripture. Each leader of the Heavenly Demon Sect possesses their own unique Great Unification technique. The young patriarch originally intended for Qin Mu to comprehend the Great Unification technique and cultivate it simultaneously with the Overlord Body 3 core technique. Although the cultivation speed would be slower, it would allow him to benefit from the advantages of both techniques. What he didn't expect was that Qin Mu directly modified the Overlord Body 3 core technique without comprehending the technique built upon the Great Nurturing Heavenly Demon scripture. Qin Mu didn't know if his actions were good or bad, or if it was the right choice. He had cultivated the Overlord Body 3 core technique since childhood and was most familiar with it, so he subconsciously transformed it into the Great Unification technique. Most importantly, he addressed the shortcomings of the Overlord Body 3 core technique in body refinement, spells, and combat techniques. He activated the improved 3 Pillars Body Technique, which now incorporated the 9 Revolutions 3 Proofs Profound Technique, a top-tier body refining method from the great nurturing Heavenly Demon scripture. Qin Mu had long admired the body refining techniques of combat-oriented schools, but neither Master Ma, Butcher, nor the cripple had taught him such methods, so he had to seek them within the great nurturing Heavenly Demon scripture. Upon activating the technique, Qin Mu immediately felt the extraordinary nature of the improved 3 Pillars Body Technique. His vital energy circulated rapidly, permeating his skin, muscles, bones, tendons, hair, and bone marrow. Previously, his 3 Pillars Body Technique only circulated within his body along relatively simple pathways, but now it had penetrated every aspect of his body. The new 3 Pillars Body Technique, besides body refining, also included soul refining and chi refining, which were also extremely advanced. Qin Mu slowed his pace, gradually calming down to carefully examine and correct any shortcomings in his cultivation technique. His basic framework of the Great Unification Technique was already established. What remained were only minor details. He had significant deficiencies in body and soul refinement. He felt as if his body were parched land, parched for half a year, desperately absorbing moisture and nutrients. The great nurturing Heavenly Demon scripture's 9 revolutions and 3 proofs involved 9 revolutions in vital energy and physical body, and 3 proofs in the skeletal system. First, bones becoming dense. Second, the body becoming as hard as iron. And third, the body becoming as solid as a mountain. He was currently only at the first stage of the first revolution and first proof. Unbeknownst to him, half a day had quietly passed. When Qin Mu slowly reached the Heavenly Records Tower, a passing secretary saw his appearance and immediately paled, hurriedly reminding him to immediately regulate his breathing and nourish his vital energy, otherwise his life might be in danger. Qin Mu initially didn't understand, until a gentle breeze swept by and he suddenly felt dizzy and nearly collapsed. Only then did he realize the gravity of the situation. Raising his hand, he saw his arms were as thin as twigs, and touching his face, he felt only thin skin clinging to his cheekbones. His once fitting clothes now hung loosely. In the past 2 hours, his body had been rapidly wasting away without his noticing, leaving him like a withered twig. Even more terrifying, his vital energy was rapidly depleting. He suddenly realized this was a hidden danger in his newly developed 3 Pillars technique of Overlord body. During cultivation, he had focused solely on perfecting the technique, neglecting the fact that refining the body and soul consumed his own vital energy. Although he had already reached the 5 elements realm, the rapid circulation of the new technique meant that the energy accumulated within his body couldn't even sustain him for 2 hours. Qin Mu immediately stopped practicing and, forcing himself to stay awake, rushed towards the scholar's residence. Upon returning, he didn't have time to explain to the astonished fox spirit and dragon Chalene. He grabbed some money and went straight to the Imperial Academy's treasury to buy medicine. In desperation, he began refining medicine on the way, his hands flying as he completed the extraction and alchemy. Before even returning to his residence, a batch of elixirs was already finished. Upon completion, faint Buddhist chants emanated from each elixir, as if each pill contained a chanting Buddha. He swallowed all the elixirs, staggering back to his courtyard while simultaneously trying to enhance their effects. The moment he stepped through the gate, everything went black, and he collapsed to the ground. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was the frantic rush of Hu Linga. He managed to ask her to help enhance the medicinal effects before losing all consciousness. After an unknown amount of time, Qin Mu awoke in a hazy state, feeling the medicinal power of the elixirs flowing like a cauldron through his body. He breathed a sigh of relief, but was filled with lingering fear. While the 3 elixir technique of the Overlord body was powerful, it harbored deadly dangers. If he hadn't refined the life-saving elixirs in time, he would likely already be dead. He lay there quietly, pondering. Modifying the cultivation method was a complex undertaking, affecting everything, and could not be accomplished in a short time. Since that's the case, it's better to maintain the status quo for now, but it's crucial to remember to replenish his vital energy. Seeing him awake, Fox Spirit, who had been watching over him, finally felt relieved. Dragon Chalene also wanted to squeeze into the room to check on him, but due to its enormous size, it could only press one of its large eyes against the window frame. Qin Mu reassured the little fox that he was alright and would recover once he fully absorbed the medicinal power. However, he knew in his heart that although his life was no longer in danger, his body's depletion would still require time to heal. Qin Mu realized that this was an internal deficiency caused by refining his body and soul. His physique was strong, but without sufficient nourishment to support it, like using a tiny alchemy furnace to power a castle in the air, destined to collapse. He had just been in such a precarious situation. Refining his soul consumed his spirit, refining his body consumed his vital energy. Although he had stabilized his spirit with a spiritual pill, his body was still in a state of extreme hunger. Now, his spirit had recovered, but his body was still frighteningly thin. He got up and asked Fox Spirit if there was any food. Upon hearing this, the dragon-like creature outside the window immediately rolled its eyes and suggested going to the back mountain to catch the blue ox. Ever since it was no longer starving, it had been thinking of taking revenge on that ox. Fox Spirit smiled and told Qin Mu to wait, then led the dragon-like creature out of the scholar's residence. The dragon-like creature wondered where to find food. Fox Spirit asked it if it could swim, revealing that she had already set her sights on a giant fish several meters long in Jade Dragon Lake. The dragon-like creature was overjoyed, claiming to be an expert diver and able to go for days without breathing. The two beasts arrived at the edge of Jade Dragon Lake. Seeing the situation was not good, the Taoist priest on the opposite bank was about to stop them when the dragon-like creature leaped into the water. The Taoist priest's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly forbade the bathing, ordering Fox Spirit to stop it as well. Fox Spirit, however, kept urging the dragon-like creature to hurry up. The Taoist priest's whisk transformed into a giant net and covered the lake surface, but with a sudden boom, the whisk exploded, leaving only the handle. Knowing he was no match for them, he fled while warning them that this action would bring about his death. Shortly after, the scholars of the Imperial Academy returned from get out of class when suddenly a colossal red fish flew through the air, its head adorned with dragon horns, its scales a deep crimson, seemingly bound by primordial energy and carried by a demonic wind to the scholars' quarters. A dragon unicorn carrying a white fox followed closely behind, tossing the giant fish into Qin Mu's courtyard before slamming the door shut. One scholar recognized it as the red dragon carp, the king of fish from Jade Dragon Lake, a delicacy served at imperial banquets. Another recalled his grandfather having tasted a foot-long red dragon carp soup, praising its deliciousness. Before everyone could recover, the white fox slipped out, chopped down a mulberry tree, and carried it back to the courtyard as firewood. Thick smoke immediately rose from the courtyard, indicating that the fish was being grilled. The scholars exchanged bewildered glances. Someone murmured that the mulberry tree was planted by the Imperial Academy of Qingdang Palace as a symbol of ambition and perseverance. Soon after, a rich aroma of grilled fish wafted from the scholars' quarters. The scholars watching exchanged bewildered glances. This young man from the Great Ruins had not only allowed his fox and dragon unicorn to hunt and kill the fish king of Jade Dragon Lake, but had also cut down the aspiring tree planted by the Green Mountain Hermit for firewood. Such unbridled behavior left everyone both astonished and suspicious. Inside the courtyard, Qin Mu flipped a fish over the fire, commenting that while the flesh was fresh, it lacked a certain richness due to the lack of marinating. He recalled fishing with the Grand Master by the lake when they had only caught a small 9-dragon carp. As he spoke, he noticed the unique fruity aroma emanating from the mulberry wood roasted fish and praised it highly. At this moment, the dragon unicorn precisely controlled the heat, while Fox Spirit manipulated wind blades to subtly infuse the fish with smoke. The fish's belly was stuffed with mulberry leaves, scallions, and ginger. The dripping oil sizzled in the fire, filling the entire courtyard with an enticing fragrance. Fox Spirit skillfully sliced off the fattest part of the fish's belly. The thin, translucent flesh was like white jade. Qin Mu suddenly remembered that spirit rejuvenation pill great nourishing technique recorded in the Great Nourishing Heavenly Demon scripture, and immediately began practicing this unique technique that converted energy through food. As the technique circulated, his withered muscles slowly began to recover at a visible rate. Just as Qin Mu was enjoying his meal, Wei Yong arrived, drawn by the aroma. Seeing Qin Mu's emaciated appearance, he half-jokingly speculated whether Fox Spirit had been absorbing his essence, which annoyed the little fox, who retorted. Upon learning that Qin Mu had gone on a business trip to practice his skills, Wei Yong kindly offered to obtain elixirs from the Duke's mansion to help him, but Qin Mu politely declined, saying that he would recover after eating the fish. While enjoying the grilled fish, Wei Yong recounted the rumors of a fierce fight between the Ba Shan priest and the Grand Priest Jiyu outside the city, which even the emperor had personally intervened to mediate. He also mentioned that the Ba Shan priest intended to take him on a training expedition. Qin Mu listened intently, but still gently reminded him, "Brother Wei, one should not speak while eating." Before long, Wei Yong, the already chubby young man, had become even fatter. He was so full he couldn't eat anymore, yet Qin Mu continued to eat, and strangely enough, despite consuming so much fish and meat, his abdomen showed no sign of swelling. To Wei Yong's astonishment, Qin Mu's previously thin body gradually swelled up like an inflating balloon, revealing firm muscles when pinched. When only the skeleton of the over 3 jong long fish remained, Qin Mu had fully recovered, his physique seemingly even stronger than before, filling Wei Yong with envy. Still not satisfied, Wei Yong inquired about the origin of this delicious fish. Qin Mu casually replied that he had caught it from Jade Dragon Lake. Wei Yong was immediately terrified. When he learned that this was actually the king of fish in the lake, and even the mulberry wood used for grilling was a symbol of advancement, his face turned deathly pale. He staggered away from the scene, muttering to himself that such a heinous act was enough to punish his entire family. Meanwhile, Jiyu Linwan, who had just returned home, received a series of urgent reports. First, the Taoist priest guarding Jade Dragon Lake reported that a fox spirit and a dragon unicorn had caused trouble in the lake and kidnapped the king of fish. Then, she learned that Qin Mu had actually cut down the tree of advancement to grill fish. Jiyu Linwan, instead of being angry, was delighted, feeling she had finally found a pretext to punish Qin Mu. She immediately led her men to arrest him. When they stormed into the scholar's residence, they found Qin Mu had already been escorted away by palace officials. Jiyu Linwan guessed the emperor wanted to interrogate him personally, so she ordered Hu Linga and Long Chalin to be arrested, and hurriedly went to the palace to meet the emperor. In the imperial garden, Jiyu Linwan found Qin Mu chatting and laughing with the Empress Dowager and Emperor Yangfeng. He steeled himself and explained Qin Mu's crimes. Emperor Yangfeng feigned seriousness as he questioned Qin Mu. Qin Mu readily admitted his ignorance of the rules and accepted his punishment. Just as Jiyu Linwan suggested executing Qin Mu and his entire family according to the law, the Empress Dowager jokingly remarked that executing Qin Mu for this matter would only make the emperor appear to favor fish over people, earning him the reputation of a foolish ruler. Emperor Yangfeng laughed heartily, waved for Jiyu Linwan to leave, and reprimanded him for his previous improper behavior in his fight with the Grand Master of Bashan. Jiyu Linwan, feeling wronged, was about to take her leave when Qin Mu timely pleaded not to make things difficult for her spirit pet. The Empress Dowager smiled and assured him that she wouldn't dare disobey, then reminded the emperor that he hadn't yet rewarded the young physician who had cured her intractable illness. Emperor Yangfeng, however, postponed the reward, citing Qin Mu's young age and need for more experience. During their conversation, the Empress Dowager enthusiastically urged Qin Mu to continue recounting his childhood anecdotes.